Hello everyone, today we will discuss about symmetry. Now symmetry means to divide an organism into equal parts. Okay, not only organism but you can divide anything into equal parts, and if that both the parts look similar, then this is called symmetrical or symmetry. Okay, to divide into equal parts. Okay, suppose this is a circle, and if I cut it from the middle, you will find that it is divided into two equal parts. These two equal parts are symmetrical in nature. Okay, they are similar in shape. Okay, this phenomenon is known as symmetry, or this process is known as symmetry. Okay, the process by which you divide anything into two equal halves is known as symmetry. Understood? Now before you learn about different types of symmetry in organisms, you have to learn about planes and axes. Now let me draw a hypothetical organism. Suppose this is a hypothetical organism, 3D in structure. Okay, now if I cut it from top to bottom, this plane, this is known as the longitudinal plane. Okay, this is called the longitudinal plane or sagittal plane. Okay, now if I cut it from here, okay, left to right, this is called the transverse plane. Transverse plane. Now if I cut it from the back to the front side, means if I separate the back from the front side, then this is known as the frontal or coronal plane. Okay, understood? I hope this much is clear. Now next is, these are the planes. Now you have to learn about axes. Now you have read about different types of axes. What are these axes? X axis, Y axis and Z axis. In any 3D structure you will find these axes. X axis, this is the X axis. Okay, this is the X axis, then this is the Y axis. Okay, and this is the Z axis. Okay, so XYZ. Now the X axis is called the longitudinal axis. Remember this, the X axis is called the longitudinal axis, or it is also called the vertical axis or vertical axis. Okay, the X axis is called the transverse axis. Remember this, this is called the transverse axis or the frontal axis, and the Z axis is called the anterior posterior axis. Anterior posterior axis means this axis goes from the front to the back. Anterior posterior means front and back. Okay, so it is called the anterior posterior axis or sagittal axis. See, sagittal axis is different from sagittal plane. Okay, don't confuse. Now You have understood different types of plane and different types of axis. Longitudinal axis means top to bottom, transverse axis means left to right, and anterior-posterior or sagittal axis means front to back. Okay, I hope this much is clear. Now next is, you have to learn about different types of symmetry. The first is spherical symmetry. Spherical symmetry. Now, spherical symmetry means the organisms are spherical in shape and can be divided into two equal halves. Okay, and organisms are spherical in shape. Suppose if I cut this organism from the middle, this is spherical in shape. If I cut it from the middle, it will give us two equal halves. Okay, these two equal halves will look like this and this. Okay, these are the two equal halves. Now, why do we see spherical symmetry? Because these organisms needs minimum resistance. Okay, needs minimum resistance. And these organisms, why do they need minimum resistance? Because they are free floating in nature. Free floating organism. These are free floating organisms. Okay, I hope it is clear. Now, you have to understand that these free floating organisms needs to move from one place to another without resistance. So what will happen is that, suppose this is the organism, it needs to go from one place to another. Now water will come from this side or air will come from this side. Now it would be easier for them to move from one place to another if there is minimum resistance on their body surface. Okay, so they are spherical in shape. So I hope this is clear. Now this type of feature is found in Volvox. Okay, Volvox, remember Volvox. Okay, now next is radial symmetry. Now what is radial symmetry? The organisms are radially symmetrical, means they are, first the main feature is that they are cylindrical in nature. Okay, radial symmetrical organisms are cylindrical in nature. So what happens is that if you cut this organism through the longitudinal plane, so I have already discussed what is the longitudinal plane. Longitudinal plane means it is the plane that goes from the top to the bottom. Okay, I hope this is clear. This is goes from the top to the bottom. Suppose this is the side, and if I take it from the top side, if I take the top view, what will happen is that if I cut it through the longitudinal axis, it will be divided into two equal halves. Again, if I cut it from the center, it will be divided into two equal halves, this side and that side. Okay, now again if I cut it from middle, it will be divided into two equal halves, this portion and that portion. Okay, similarly two equal halves. Now it gives the appearance of a spoke of a wheel. Okay, and each halves is known as antimeres. Remember this term, antimeres. Okay, now radially symmetrical organisms have this type of symmetry because they are mainly static in nature. Static means they do not move much, means their aboral surface is attached to the plane, and this is found in hydra. Okay, example is Hydra. Suppose if I draw the organism, you will see that the aboral side means the side that is opposite to the oral side. Okay, this is the aboral side, it is attached to some surface. So what will happen is that these organisms require such radial symmetry because their system or their development will help them to gather information from all sides. Okay, from left, right. Okay, they will gather information from the all side. Their systems, nervous system, digestive system, all the systems are distributed in certain manner radially that they can access all the sides of the environment. Why do they need such feature? Because suppose the food comes from this side and the organism needs to access to this food from this side. So this radially symmetrical organism will have some features or organs that will help them capture the food from all the sides. Okay, if the food comes from this side, they will be able to capture from this side. If the food comes from this side, they will be able to capture from this side. Even if the predator or some unknown organisms come, they would be able to defend themselves from every side. Okay, so radially symmetrical feature is important for organisms that are static in nature. Okay, means their adult forms are mainly static in nature. So this is found in Hydra. Okay, now biradial symmetrical organisms are the next that we will discuss. Okay, and the next is biradial symmetry. Now what are radially symmetrical organisms are known as? These are known as radiata. Remember, radiata. Okay, radially symmetrical organisms are known as radiata. This is important part of your syllabus. So if they ask you what is radiata, you will have to discuss these features. And why do they need such type of features? You will have to discuss that they are static in nature and they need access to all the side of the environment for protection, for food. Okay, now next is biradial symmetry. Biradial symmetry is similar to radial symmetry, but the only difference is that in biradial symmetrical organisms they have appendages. Okay, suppose this is a cup. Okay, a cup is what type of symmetry? It is radially symmetrical. You can cut it from the longitudinal axis and it will be divided into two equal halves. Now if I give this cup a handle, okay, would you be able to divide it into two equal halves? The answer is no, because there is a presence of a handle. This similar concept comes with biradial, is applicable to biradially symmetrical organisms. They have presence of appendages and that makes them different from the radially symmetrical organisms. Now this is because they have presence of appendages. Okay, now suppose this is a biradially symmetrical organism. The examples are, you see, in jellyfish. Okay, suppose this is a jellyfish, they will have appendages like this. Now if you cut this organism, you will find that they are similar, but due to presence of appendages, they do not give the appearance of a radially symmetrical organism. They are not completely radially symmetrical. So the different axes that are used to cut this organism or to find the symmetry are, these are the longitudinal and the transverse axis. Okay, and the second is the longitudinal and the sagittal axis. Okay, suppose if I draw the organism, the other is the longitudinal and the sagittal axis. What will happen is that if you divide this organism through this axis, you will find some type of similarity. The upper portion will look similar to the lower portion, or the lower portion or the side portion or the left portion will look similar to the left portion will look similar to the right portion. Similarly, here the right portion will look similar to the left portion, or the upper portion will look somewhat similar to the lower portion. Here also the upper portion will look somewhat similar to the lower portion, but not completely similar, because due to presence of appendages. This makes them different from the radially symmetrical organism. Biradial symmetry is also found in jellyfish. You give the example jellyfish. Okay. Now you will see next is bilateral symmetry. Okay. Bilateral symmetry. Now what is bilateral symmetry? Bilateral symmetry means the organisms can be divided into two equal halves. Completely into two equal halves through the longitudinal plane. This can be done mainly through the longitudinal plane. Suppose this is the hypothetical organism. Okay, and if you cut it, it will be divided into two equal halves. Okay, what are the two equal halves? This will look like, one portion will look like this, and the other portion will look like this. So these are similar left and right halves. So through the longitudinal plane you have divided this organism into two equal parts. Now this type of symmetry is mainly found in higher organisms. This is also found in Platyhelminthes. Okay, and suppose now if I give you an example, suppose this is an earthworm. Okay, this is an earthworm. Now if I cut it through the longitudinal plane, what will happen is that you would be able to divide it into two equal halves. Okay, so this type of organisms are known as bilaterally symmetrical organism, or these type of organisms are known as bilateria. Okay, so we have read about different types of symmetry. Now one important thing you need to know, that is there are also asymmetrical organisms. Now what is asymmetry? Asymmetrical organisms. The asymmetrical organism means these organisms do not possess any symmetry. Suppose this is the organism. Okay, they do not possess any symmetry. This is mainly found in amoeba or lower organisms. Okay, you cannot divide these organisms into equal parts. They will not be divided into equal parts. Cannot be divided into equal equally. Okay, equally or into equal parts. I hope this is clear. Okay, so we have studied today about different types of symmetry. So let us revise. What are the different types of symmetry we have studied? Spherical symmetry in volvox, radial symmetry in hydra. Okay, biradial symmetry in jellyfish, bilateral symmetry in higher organisms like earthworm, humans can be divided bilaterally. Okay, the left and right half looks almost similar. So I have given you the example of earthworm. And asymmetrical organisms, I have told you that they are organisms that cannot be divided equally into equal parts. Okay, now this is found in lower organisms like amoeba. It is also found in porifera. Okay, asymmetrical organisms are porifera, amoeba, protozoans. Many protozoans are asymmetrical in nature. Okay, I hope this much is clear. Now the questions that would come in your exams are: define different types of symmetry or discuss different types of symmetry with examples, and why such symmetry is required in those organisms. Okay, I hope this is clear. Thank you everyone.